When I was 13, I had a dream that an intruder had broken into my house through an unlocked window next to my bed and killed my family. They left me alive. When I woke up, the window next to me was open, and I nearly shit myself. I grabbed my machete and slowly creeped to the bathroom. Nobody was in the house, and it turns out that my father noticed it was really hot in my room, so he opened the window in the middle of the night. Sitting alone as a young guy in the living room, empty house with no one home. I'm holding a big cup of soda in my lap, watching TV, when an unmistakable voice, strong and clear but only in my head, tells me to pour the soda into my lap. I was like, well, that's a strange stray thought to have. But then it said it again, and I felt my hand tipping. Next thing I knew, I poured the soda into my lap. I'm sitting there for a second, staring at the ceiling, wondering how big an idiot I am to actually do this. When I look down, my lap is completely dry with no soda residue, and my soda cup is empty. I know, not that exciting, but I wish I knew what had happened. By my hometown, there was a hiking trail that people went to very infrequently. It was along the side of the Niagara Escarpment, so it had some climbable cliffs and some very shallow caves that you could crawl around on. I went with some friends when I was 19/20, and we were crawling around and found a cave that went pretty deep. We had never been in there before, had never even seen it before, so we pushed forward and decided to check it out, even though we had no flashlights, and this was when cell phones didn't really have a flashlight function. We stepped into the cave, and it was easily 30 degrees cooler than outside. Upon looking around with which light we had, we noticed it was really clean inside the cave, as in it didn't have beer cans littered everywhere, like all the other small caves did. While in there, we got a really eerie feeling after being in there shortly, hearing weird and strange things, feeling like we were being touched, poked, and pulled, and not having any way to figure out who was doing it because it was too dark. We were just using lighters to see what was around us. We were convinced one of us was messing with the others. Although any time we sparked up a lighter, we were all decently far apart. We decided to hightail it out of there after only a few minutes, convinced to come back with flashlights. We came out to see that it was now dusk outside. When we entered, it was midday. Somehow, we had lost roughly 3 hours inside of this cave. We went back with flashlights the next week, but have never been able to find this cave again. Only mildly creepy, but definitely made me question reality. Me and a friend were sitting about in my room playing video games, etc., when out of nowhere there was this insanely loud pop. My ears were ringing. It was so loud. We both instantly looked at each other, thinking one of us had caused it, but neither of us had a clue what happened. It sounded as though it came from thin air in the middle of the room. I had a dream where my boss hurt his back, and he couldn't work that day. He came out with his shirt off and informed me that I would still be working that day. He was a slave driver, so that didn't surprise me. I wake up from the dream and head to work. A buddy picks me up and we drive to his house. I told my buddy about the dream, and we both laughed, knowing my boss would probably do that. I knock on the door, and no one comes. But I heard the garage door open, so I walked over to see if he was in there. He opens the door with no shirt on, and the exact same conversation I had in my dream unfolds in front of me, word for word, and no one would have even believed me had I not told my buddy a moment earlier. I always remember this, and do not have an explanation for it. When I was about 4 or 5 years old, I remember waking up in the middle of the night and walking to the stairs. I remember closing my eyes for a second at the top of the stairs, and when I opened them, I would be at the bottom of the stairs. I would run upstairs and close my eyes, and the same thing would happen again. It happened at least 4, 5 times until my parents called me to go to bed because they could hear me run up the steps. It's weird because I was wide awake and do not have a history with the sleepwalking. I still think about it and wonder how that was possible. There were two. The first one was a UFO. I saw a light streak across the sky, make a 90-degree turn, and streak away until it vanished. Years later learned that it was probably just an asteroid breaking up. Put that one to rest. Once, when I was about 8, we were driving along a road in the back country, and I was staring out the window, and in the distance in a field I saw a silvery, green, glowing cloud that was completely unnatural. It suddenly moved, almost ran, towards the road, then up a tree just as we were passing it. As we climbed a hill, I saw it drop from the tree onto the road and float back into the fields. At least 6 times in my life, I've gone home. I know I locked the door, but when I'm about to put my key in, the door opens like someone was expecting me, but no one's there. It happened at my mom's house, my house, and other people's houses. I was helping my buddy move into his new house, and when we came back with more stuff, I had to pee, so I ran to the front door, and it opened. When he came in, he said he locked it before we left. Don't know what it is, but maybe it's a superpower. I am a TA in our college's anatomy class, which takes place in the cadaver lab, dead bodies. Late one night, 1 a.m. working alone in the cadaver lab, and I start to hear a noise. It's hard to tell what the noise sounds like, but it's a consistent muffled noise. So I kind of walk around the room and locate it. Now normally the bodies are all kept in these big metal crates, but at the time we had one more body than we did, so one body was in a plastic body bag, and that's where the noise was coming from. So I'm terrified at this point, all alone in the lab, looking down at this plastic body bag, that I can see the outline of the body that presumably is coming back to life because it is definitely making noise. I stood over this body for a solid minute, debating whether I should open the bag, and finally the noise just stopped. I got all my stuff together and bolted from the lab. A couple weeks later, the professor tells me to be careful if I ever work on that body, because there is a live pacemaker in it, so don't cut into that. And it will vibrate and ring every few hours if it's low on battery. I let out the biggest sigh of relief that we weren't haunted. Sleep paralysis. A few years ago, I was dreaming I was talking to a friend of mine. So far, nothing weird. But then, for some reason, I realized that I was in a dream, and the person I was talking with, technically, wasn't my friend. Suddenly, their appearance turned to black, and I felt them pushing me down and holding me down in my bed. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. At this point, my cat woke up and jumped on me as if to protect me. Then, the dark silhouette or whatever that thing was vanished, and I woke up. I swear I had red marks on my shoulders where that thing was holding me down in my dream.